Hey everyone, how's it going? This is your friend Venkat Ramakrishnan at Software Testing and Quality Talks. Today we have a special guest in our podcast who is a software tester who specializes in API testing and who is deeply passionate about spreading the joy of software testing to everyone around. None other than Mirza Sizik. Mirza does domain-driven development as well as test-driven development, develops test-related policies, strategies, various test plans, etc., as well as designs automation test strategies from scratch for the company he works for. Pretty impressive. Welcome, Mirza. You and I have been talking on social media about the challenges in introducing software testing to non-testers. You had some very interesting thoughts on that. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, Venkat, thanks a lot for the nice introduction and for the welcoming words. That means a lot. In teaching others how to test, first and foremost, I think it's important to get them interested in it, to see that testing is not something that should be just left as a formality that's done at the very end of the software development lifecycle, and that testing is an integral part of it, and everybody should be interested in it.
How do you think you can invoke that interest?
I think setting some examples and showing people what happens if we don't test properly, like what are the possible ramifications of defects escaping into productions, using some kind of vivid examples and things like that. So people just can get a concrete idea of why is it so important for us. And also, I think it's important to elaborate that quality should be everyone's responsibility in any mature environment, and that there are great benefits behind this approach, because if you just have a typical silos of QAs that are the only ones doing testing, then they're the only ones that get blamed, and QAs can be seen as some kind of gatekeepers and a blocking element in a team. And it shouldn't be that way. If everybody is involved in quality, things improve drastically, I think.
It absolutely helps when we have the defects database updated with the root causes to show the non-testers the reason for the bug.
Yes, I definitely agree. A proper root cause analysis can really provide us with a lot of insights and help us prevent similar things from happening in the future.
Also, every test situation is different. Testers might be coming in and going out of the team. Without documentation of the system behavior, it's going to be difficult. There are better ways to document requirements.
Yes, I agree, definitely. I think the Three Amigos approach works here really well to get people with different perspectives working on the requirements. Testers can add their skepticism to it. The BAs can add the business knowledge, and developers can maybe point out the potential technical risk, that kind of thing, to have different eyes on the problem.
When you're working with non-testers, what challenges did you face in terms of introducing them to testing?
At times, people are usually not particularly familiar with it. When they say testing, they think it's just writing a test case for a user story, things like that, because there's actually a lot more involved. So with developers, especially if they're doing TDD, I found that it's really not that hard to get them on board with testing and the importance of it. So if they're already doing like pair programming, doing some pair testing with them should be a relatively acceptable concept for them, I guess. So you show them a maybe exploratory testing session, they see how it works and they gain some benefit from it and some deep understanding. I mean, they don't have to do it themselves, but seeing how it's done firsthand, I think that helps a great deal to kind of make it less abstract and hopefully less boring, in my opinion.
While doing exploratory testing, and when we are introducing exploratory testing to the developers who are doing TDD, how do you document the test scenarios or the test cases that you work with? Do the developers directly code those tests?
Well, not directly, but we maybe using exploratory sessions sort of to get an idea what should be automated and what would be worthwhile automating. So we would use it to explore, focus on a certain part of the app, and we would have some kind of a brief testing charter for our exploratory sessions, just to keep it focused and not to lose track and go everywhere. And that way, I think we get a better idea. Just pick a small chunk of the app and focus on that, I guess.
If you can do the exploratory testing session with developers doing TDD with you based on the exploratory tests you come up with, wouldn't that be a good idea?
Yeah, I think that would be a good approach, definitely. Provide a lot of benefit for having automated tests like that. Or at least jotting down some ideas for future automated tests.
Instead of going to Charter and then from Charter to TDD, we can sit directly with developers with our test ideas and discuss them on a pair programming or a mob programming session and ask them to include the tests that we think are important. That reduces a lot of documentation and time.
Yeah, that would be like in the spirit of agile, working results instead of overly detailed documentation, because we live in a real world where we can't spend too much time working on documentation, I guess.
When we say detail, quote, maybe we can talk about it in a different talk. So coming back to introducing testing to the non-testers, I would like to focus on some best practices from our good old days, like boundary value testing, pairwise testing, equivalence class, and things like that. How effectively are you using these kind of techniques when you speak to the people who are non-testers?
Well, in terms of boundary value analysis and equivalence partitioning, usually developers get a grasp of it pretty easily, because if they're already doing unit tests and integration tests, they might not know what some of these techniques are called, but when I explain it to them, they realize and they say, oh, so that's when you use certain numbers from the range, so you just don't use every possible combination. You just take a sample of edge cases, like at the boundaries of a certain value range and things like that. Actually, working with developers in terms of testing is, in my experience, it was a lot easier than I initially expected.
What kind of challenges you have with working with new testers? You said that developers are easy to work with. How do you bring new testers up to speed who have not tested?
Well, the biggest challenge I've seen is sometimes new testers can get a bit too idealistic. So I think it's important in advising them kind of to choose their battles. You don't have to get every defect fixed. And it's important for them to learn how to prioritize things and prioritize times when they're testing. So proper use of testing techniques like analyzing risks and things like that, that can help them a lot in the long run, I believe.
I know sometimes people are very rigid about their views on their defects getting fixed rather than overall product quality. Those things don't change because it's a matter of ownership, pride, etc. So that tends to recur irrespective of what process you follow. Anything else as part of this discussion?
When speaking to developers, if they're not already doing it, maybe encourage them to review other developers' code, because I think code reviews can really help catch a lot of issues. And I'm not talking about trivial issues like comments and formatting of classes and these things that can be kind of automatically set up with linters and code completion, but constant refactoring that can be implemented through code reviews. I think that's really important. And maybe try to adding some fun into testing sessions, have presentations, something casual with the team, and maybe have some pizza or social games while we discuss testing and things like that. Just try to win people over and show them that testers are not the enemy.
All right, so you talked about refactoring. So what kind of refactoring do you do?
Well, mostly in terms of automation, I try to refactor my tests constantly and try to improve the framework, the utility classes and everything. I have a regular pair programming sessions with one of the developers, so we kind of work together, and we found it really beneficial. He has learned a lot about testing, and I've been really improving my coding skills because, as a tester, coding is one of the things I like, but it's not my main focus. So I'm not good at coding as somebody who does it as their main job, so to speak,
It has become imperative for testers to learn programming these days and contribute to source code reviews. It's mutually beneficial to testers as well as developers. The only challenge is the abundance of programming languages that we have today.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's pretty hard to keep up with all the technologies. But I mean, sometimes if you don't mind being on a little more slower paced project, you usually end up using a single piece of technology. Like I've been working for enterprise customers mainly, and the two main languages were Java and C#, like the typical stable enterprise languages without many surprises and things like that. But I think for people working for startups, it can be very, very demanding in terms of just the sheer amount of new tools that are coming up and different technology stacks. And especially maybe in the JavaScript world, things are pretty hectic there from kind of my point of view, I guess.
But even in enterprises which have multiple projects and which have demands for several programming languages in their different projects, it's a tough situation. I was looking at no-code applications some time back. It's really attractive and gels well with many non-testers as well as new testers.
Well, I haven't had much experience on it except, kind of reading blogs about it and watching a few tutorials, but I think there might be some kind of a future in there where, well, it doesn't have to be completely no code, sorry, but it could be some kind of a low code domain-specific languages and things like that that could kind of help bridge that gap between less technical and more technical people.
It also increases the speed of development. You just have to drag and drop. The time to build the user interface is pretty short. You will be able to get the feedback of the users quickly, and a lot of automation will also be reduced.
Yeah, I mean, that's very possible. I saw yesterday that GitHub published a product for it's kind of a AI-powered coding tool that kind of writes a lot of code, and they're actually using it. So I think it could be very useful in the future, I believe. I'm hoping, at least.
I'm not even talking about AI. I'm talking about no-code tools that generate drop-downs and text boxes. We don't need to spend our life developing and testing this stuff. We can use no-code applications to get them done quickly. There is a lot of value in this. I think we will wrap up. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, based on your experience, what are some tips on teaching non-testers how to test? So what would be the most important things in your view?
As a tester, I hold 3 things very important: attention to detail, big picture thinking, and curiosity to learn. If you can inculcate these values into a developer or a tester, I think that will automatically set the path for interest, better involvement, and better motivation. When I try to inculcate these values to other people in the team, it has been very successful. We should also be looking at the entire tech stack. What kind of operating systems we are testing with, what kind of devices are we testing with, etc. A person with a very good experience in the tech stack, just by looking at the defect, will be able to tell that, oh, this is happening in Linux because of the patch that was released 2 months back. Trying to have deep technical knowledge like that will help.
Yeah, those are some really great points. I gotta say, this talk was great. I really enjoyed our discussion. Thanks for the opportunity, Venkat.
Hey, no problem at all, Mirza. I would like to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me on behalf of Software Testing and Quality Talks on my YouTube channel. And I look forward to have future discussions with you about other aspects of software testing.
Likewise. Thanks. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All of those who listen to this podcast, thank you so much. Please stay tuned to my YouTube channel by subscribing to my channel, as I am in the process of bringing out regular videos on various aspects of software testing and quality. See you soon.